today's webinar session, Young Creative Mind Series Top 4. For a hassle-free webinar, we request all the participants to kindly turn off their audio as well as video and to maintain the same throughout the course of the webinar. We request all the participants to type their questions in the chat box, which will be addressed to after the presentation is completed. We warmly welcome our speaker for today's Young Creative Mind series, Architect Christopher Walter, an architect and interior designer from Dubai. Welcome, sir. He's here with us today to discuss on the topic, Building Career in Architecture. He completed his bachelor degree in architecture in VNIT, Nagpur, India, and his master's in interior and spatial design in University of Arts, London. Completing his bachelor degree in architecture in the year 2010, he has been working as an interior designer and FF&E designer in Dubai since then. Presently, he's working as an international design manager in Zebra Projects, Dubai. It is an immense pleasure in having you here with us for the webinar session, sir. And I now request the convener, Architect Lokesh, sir, to give us a welcome note.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I welcome Architect Christopher Walter. Welcome, sir, to Seed family. And thank you for accepting our invitation. And we have seen your work. It was very impressive. And we thank you for accepting our invitation and giving the presentation. And I really want to thank management for the support, extending their support to host this event. Chairman sir, co-chairman sir, director sir, and deputy director sir, and Dean ENT and Dean KTR for this great success. And I really thank to my dear students and faculty members for making this event grand success. Thank you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for joining with us, sir. And I request you to take over for the presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for introducing me, and good afternoon, all students, faculty members. I'm just going to start sharing my screen so we can get on with this. All right, can you please confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we can. Please proceed.
All right. Okay. So as you know, the topic is building a career through architecture. I would like to first just go through my profile. My name is Christopher Walter. I am currently working in Dubai at Zebra Projects. It's a UK-based company. We have 4 offices across London, Phoenix in the US, Hong Kong, and Dubai. We are into interior architecture and interior design, and we focus on specialize in fashion retail and food and beverage. Food and beverage would come under the category of restaurants, bars, clubs, cafes, including hospitality. So I finished my Bachelor of Architecture at VNIT Nagpur, and further on I came back to Dubai. I continued practicing here before I went to University of Arts London in UK to pursue Master of Arts in Interior and Spatial Design. Now just a little bit about my career journey. As I finished architecture and before I pursued a postgraduate degree. So I started off with sort of going from the macro to micro with urban design and architecture. I soon found myself in a position back in 2009 and 2010 in a sort of global recession where architecture went on a sort of downfall, and maybe I took it as a blessing as well. So I moved on slightly into a different field to explore, which is interior architecture. I then moved to interior design. Further on, a couple of years, I tried out interior contracting, which was very technical, but there was lots to learn from. And then I wanted to even tap into furniture and products. So I went into furniture design. This couple of years after graduation was, I think, the most important years of building my career, because I tried to explore different fields, tried to understand where my interest is, and where I think I could excel, and I could test my potential in different areas. I soon found myself lacking a bit of the creative side. As you know, I did Bachelor of Architecture, which was a full-fledged 5-year course, which all of you are aware of, and most of you are in the first or either on the final year. And being from an Indian curriculum, we are quite strong and very well versed in technical knowledge. Of course, we're also very creative, but personally on my side, I was a bit behind on creativity because I was very interested in the technical aspect of the course and of my during the course of my work. That's when I decided to go to London, to UK. And it was a very conceptual course. It broadened my conceptual thinking, and it brought out a different creative side in me, I feel. After I finished the postgraduate course, I came back to Dubai, and I got involved in a company which is Zebra. I took up spatial design and specialized in fashion retail and food and beverage. Along the course of years, I soon found myself very interested in what I was doing because I explored quite a lot in this specific field. I then picked up the design management part of it, and soon later then I picked up the design direction. So it was more about the spatial design, managing a design, and giving a proper design direction and concept direction for these projects. Now, I'm just quickly going to go into the website of the firm just to give you a short insight of what we do. So we've got a list of projects here, and our projects are all over the world. It's across the globe, which involves us to travel a lot, to do a lot of case studies, look at different fashion stores around, different food and beverage units around, and bring to the table what we learn from different areas and different fields as we travel, as we move around, as we work with different clients. See, if I pull up one of the projects that we have done is a cosmetics store called Fresh, which is in London in Harrods. So the whole concept here was evolved from the brand name itself being Fresh. It's all about how you go around with your lighting designs. If you see the lighting, the ceiling up here, the colors that we've used, the materials, the very organic wood effect that we've given to the merchandise equipments that we've used, the relaxation areas. So it was more about trying to understand what the client wants. So as you walk into the store, you feel you're in a very fresh environment. Your products are something that stands out because of the light, because of the merchandise equipments you use, the colors that you have. Another example that I can give you is a very different one. I'm not going to pick the ones that are very common, but Mariatash, which is a jewelry store. Again, this is a US-based company, which is across the globe. So it was more about understanding what people do with jewelry. It's understanding the customers. When you design, you need to understand who are the people that you want to attract. Mostly there are maximum of women who like jewelry. Yes, men also like jewelry. So you need to design around those aspects. It's also the customer journey once you enter the store. Where do women first go? What do they look at first? What catches their eye? So it's not just about design. It's also about trying to understand the user. And more importantly, these days it's about user experience than the design that's within your closed entity. All right, I'm just going to show you 2 examples. I will leave on the website for you to further browse on and look and have a look into detail. Coming back to the presentation. So I'm going to talk about key points in a career building. So I have 8 points on my list. We'll go through each point. I'm going to show you a couple of slides, and we'll have a little bit of interaction if we can and if everything goes well. So the points are: you first explore different work fields. I've highlighted the word work fields because I think that's a key factor in building your career. We often try and stick to the fields that we feel are more comfortable to us, but the reality is that when you start to explore different fields is the time when you really understand and discover your true potential. Try something new and different if you don't currently enjoy what you do and how you do. Again, that goes subsequent to your work field. If you're trying to do something and if you're currently stuck into something that you keep doing and it's more monotonous on a daily basis, and if you feel that you're not really enjoying it, you need to try something different, because if you don't enjoy your work, eventually you will not excel. You will not give you 100% at it. Number 3 is you need to discover what you are passionate about. This is something that you need to ask yourself. You can get guidance from elsewhere, but it's for yourself to understand what you're passionate about. The 4th is you need to practice on your craft. If you really understand what you like, if you're passionate about something, you need to keep practicing. You need to develop your skills in a particular area. Number 5, never be afraid to be different. This is something everyone is afraid of. Everyone wants to follow the same path. Everyone wants to go in the same direction, but someone who is walking in a different direction, they're looked at in a different way. But never be afraid to be different. The 6th, there is no right or wrong. 7th, you keep an open mind and enjoy the process. And 8, always have a positive mindset. Now let's go through all of them one by one. Exploring different work fields. So what I would suggest is you work with other creative professionals, whether it's even not related to architecture or if it deviates from architecture. Always keep an open mind to have an interaction with other creative professionals. That's how you will learn. Apply for work experience when you have spare time, or volunteer for it. So this is something for those who are in the first year right now, or even if you are still in your initial years of architecture. Whenever you have some spare time between your semesters, I'm sure you always have a semester break, either 2 or 3 semesters, and you have 2 months, sometimes a month and a half. Try and use this time to volunteer for some work, or try and work in an office, because that's how you will get a head start in trying to build your career, trying to understand what you're interested in. Because studying architecture, we only have one thing in our mind. Once I finish a 5-year full-fledged course, I'm going to become an architect. I'm going to sit in an office. I'm going to draft. I'm going to build buildings. I'm going to design buildings. So this sort of direction that you have in your mind, you can explore different areas as you work between your semesters from the first year till the fifth year. So from my experience, when I was in my first year, I finished my first semester and I started to work in different offices every semester. So by the time I finished 4 years, 4.5 years, and before I went into professional practice, I've already had worked in 4 to 5 different offices, and I'd sort of understood what the architect does once he finishes, once he graduates, or is there a different area that I am interested in? So it gives you a little bit more insight about what you want moving ahead in your career. Learn more about creative industries, read, look at blogs, watch videos, try and understand what's going on in different creative industries, whether it's fashion, food, travel, anything. Knowledge is power, so always try and grasp as much as knowledge as you can. Now let's look at the work fields that we could possibly explore.
Sorry to interrupt, Chris, but can you reshare your screen again with the presentation because it's become like a thumbnail?
All right, just a minute.
Maybe stop presenting and start presenting again. That should work. Thanks. Perfect.
Yep. All right. So moving ahead with work fields, I will move from macro to micro, and then I will slightly deviate into other fields, a little bit more abstract, a little bit more different, but yet slightly related and something that we can tap into. So we look at urban design and planning, which sits at the macro level. So basically zooming out to in. Then we look at architecture. Then we have interior architecture, more related to interior design, but it's more related to architecture with space planning, facade treatment, interior facade treatment, etc. Then you have pure interior design, which is your materials, what it looks from the inside. You have restoration architecture, which of course is preserving old ancient structures. Then you have landscape architecture. This again is something that people who love flora, who love plants, who have a lot of interest in that direction. I mean, there are people I see who love plants, and if you ask them to name any sort of leaf or any sort of flower, they are so well versed that they know this inside out. And this is something I feel this is a good knowledge that they have, that they could tap into and use it as a landscape architect. Because sometimes we tend to think landscape architect is something that I don't want to pursue because I studied architecture. It's about building, it's about design, construction, and landscape is all about plants. But the reality is that there's much more to landscape architecture as well if you have the knowledge and if you're interested. Then you have something called extreme architect. This is quite new. It's all to do with weather conditions. So, for example, we have hurricanes, we have floods, you have earthquakes. So there's a specific area where architects specialize in, and they try and come up with solutions for a building that could withstand these weather conditions, which is quite interesting because with the current situation of global warming, we come across these hurricanes, floods, earthquakes more often than what we used to back in the days. Moving on, we have lighting architecture. Now, this is also quite interesting, very intriguing. We design a building, we built it, but without the effect of light, there's so much of difference that you see between two buildings. And even if, let's say, your design or building is not designed to its optimum level, but if your lighting is perfect, then the building actually stands out than any other building, because light brings out the true true design of anything it is, whether it's a building, whether it's an artifact, whether it's a piece of whether it's a monument, anything. Now, I'd like to quickly go through a couple of videos. As you see, I've got 2 play buttons. Now, this is a project I personally worked on, which is in the UK. It's called Debenhams. They had completely changed the facade. So if you see, these are small 5 by 5 squares of aluminum panels which were put together, and they were tied to one end, and the wind simply moved each aluminum panel and created a wave ripple effect. And behind, we had a lighting design behind it, which showcased the building in a different manner. I'm just going to pull up some images. So this is the facade that you see. If you see, we've created a lighting effect around the building, and I have an image which shows you the before and after. So if you see on the left here is image of the building, what it was, and on the right you see what it was once the lighting and the sort of kinetic facade was put into play. So this created a lot of demand for this brand. It pulled in a lot of crowd in. I mean, the footfall was in millions. The turnover, the business turned. Well, there's a different story now that they're going down bankrupt. But back in the days, this was the talk of the town, and it was quite a successful project. Again, here, if you see on the left and the right, you see the difference the lighting makes to the area. So this is all about lighting design, lighting architecture. It's not just about throwing or installing any piece of light. There's a whole detail that goes into lighting design. I'm sure the students who are in the second or third year would have been introduced to courses like lighting design, lux levels, etc. So this is something that I think we underestimate in architecture. Okay, moving forward, you have political architecture, which is a very debatable topic. People who are involved in politics, in decision making, influencing the people that are involved in the typology of your city, etc. You have naval architecture, of course, those people who have interest in marine, in shipping. Now, I know we have a different course altogether in India for naval architecture, but the architecture, the basic architectural course is always the base course for every creative profession, as I see. Architectural photography. Now, this again, let me take you to a web page of a photographer. So this German architect, Christian, You see how she's captured the perspective in the right way. Now, photography is easy. People know how to take photographs. It's about play of light, color, etc. But if you don't have the right perspective, you're not able to capture the right image. So if you look at this image, you see how she's captured the perspective of a building from underneath, which involves the sky. You've got the mirror effect. Again, what a beautiful picture with the Eiffel Tower in the center and two structures on the side. Now, this is something only an architect can catch. You see around here, the photographers try to focus on the structure that's above and that's near, while at the same time focusing on the skyline behind. So again, this is a very architectural photograph, and it's a piece that can be captured by a certain eye. I'd like to pull up some of her pictures of street photography, which I think there are lots of elements in place that makes the photograph look even much better. So you see how important the characters are in this photograph. If you remove the character, the photograph sort of becomes pointless, even though you have a lot of architectural elements. And very often when we, for example, when we do a 3D model, we sort of add characters to our model to enhance or to give a meaning or to give a story to it. Again, this picture is so beautiful. You have two people talking to each other. You have a cycle. You have a door frame. Most of us would take pictures of door frames of different areas, but this tells a whole story. If you remove any of these elements, the whole essence of the picture is lost. Play of light and shadow. Now, many of your students would be or probably introduced to climatology and how the sun creates an effect, a shadow effect over a building. So this is again about a photograph from an architect's point of view, knowing how the shadow plays with the building.
So can you
something very common.
Screen share?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Can you reset with the screen share issue? We're not able to see what. Yeah, thank you.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
It's pretty clear.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I'm not sure if you heard this part, but yes, climatology, how the sun plays an effect, gives a shadow effect on the building. This is something most students now would be learning or would have learned. So this again is captured from an architect's point of view. Doors, something that's very common to all of us, and so on. Moving back to the presentation. Sorry. So that's what we looked at, architectural photography. Then you have architectural journalists and critics, some people who are involved in, again, a lot of reading, being a critic, professor and researcher, something that's very famous in India. Architectural tour guide. In fact, there's a funny story. I actually know a friend who was very interested in traveling and was quite well versed with a lot of architectural monuments, architectural buildings all over the major cities, and name a piece of architecture and he would tell you the details of when it was built, who built it, and he would give you a whole story about the whole building. Eventually, he went on to become a tour guide, tried something different, and he's now a CEO of a company where he trains people online, and he travels the world. So that's something some people are interested in, and architecture could be a good way to tap yourself into that, to bring it back and forth. Now I'm going to go slightly into the more internal design, which let's start with furniture design. You have product design, you have graphics, you have fashion design. Now I want to play a quick video on fashion design, which I'm sure everyone has heard of. Jimmy Choo. So Jimmy Choo was a guy who came from Malaysia. His father was a shoemaker. Jimmy was very much interested in making shoes as well. He learned the craft by hand from his father. He was interested in design. And then he came to London. That's where he started his career. And the man had a vision. He had the design ability, but he didn't have the formal education. He eventually got the chance, but he started from scratch. So the whole point of this video is we as students, we have the privilege of being in workshops in the university, having access to a lot of technical data. It's good to get your hands on and try something in the workshop to understand where your interest lies, whether it's, and this could be something that would bring out your true talent, or you can tap your true potential and understand how you can use this in architecture. So this is a very interesting video where he starts making one, and eventually, as we all know, the Princess of England back then, Princess Diana, was the person who went to Jimmy Choo, and she got her own footwear crafted by him, and that's how his story of success began. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Moving on, you have textile design, you have game design. Lots of people are interested in games, in creating 3D models, and the best person who could create a 3D model or a 3D animation that would be successful is no other than an architect, because an architect would understand the scale, proportion, interesting areas, all those things that we learn throughout our course during architecture. You have web design. This is something that we all do during, I'm sure you students would participate in NASA. It's all about creating your page, making your layouts look beautiful, making it more attractive. So this is where your web designing skills come into play. Then you have stage and set designer, cinematography, event planning. This is something very popular in India, which is very successful as well. And I see a lot of people do it without any degree, but an architect would be able to give the maximum output, understanding color, understanding play, understanding functionality of space, etc., etc. Then going slightly more bizarre would be artist, like painting, sculptor, fine arts, movie direction and curation, animation, magazine editor, craft artist, jewelry, decoration, needlework, toys, fiction writer, and the last one that I would say is chef. I mean, this is something very controversial. It's one of my personal favorites. In fact, I have discovered a talent in myself as well during the lockdown. As we know, there were limited things to do. So there are some things that you discover you're good at, maybe that could be something that you could tap your potential into. So I'd like you to see a video which is quite interesting. An architect who started as a designer. Oh, we have a ad. Okay. So she started as an architectural designer and then used her architectural knowledge as a chef and was quite successful. So you see how she's using the architectural skills that she has, and this is what people want these days. It's quite different, it's quite unique. She used a 3D printer to make the molds, and then you use that as your tool. You see how her pieces were so architectural and it was so unique that it sort of went all over the world. All right. Let's play a quick game. Now, this is going to be a little tricky. Let's see how it works. I want all of you to log on to www.menti.com. So if you open your phone, or you can do it through your browser, it's the best if you can do it through your phone. You will need internet access. So if you say www.menti.com, and once you open the page, it will ask you to enter a code. I want you to put the code which you see on the screen, 490341. So menti.com, put in the code 490341. And there's a question. Sorry, just give me a minute. Okay. Now I can see people are already typing in. Okay. So as you can see, the people who have answered the maximum, the highest permutation and combination will be a bigger letter. So I see right now it's interior design that's going, there's set design, there's chef, there's photography, and still going, 39 people, 40 people, 41. I see interior design and set design and chef and photography is the top 4. Now we have got set design, interior design, and chef. 52, 54 people still going. Okay, I see a lot of people have chosen a lot of different areas, which is very good. I see people at the small end saying furniture design, some talking about landscape, some talking about lighting, some talking about naval architecture, some talking of product design, dramatics. That's new. Okay, so I think we have our final answer of 74 people. So on top we have interior design. Oh, it's still moving, 76. So as you can see, a lot of you're very diverse. As we say, India is a diverse country. So yes, quite true here. You see a lot of people have chosen various different fields and not just one, but yes, interior design on the top. You have photography, you have chef, you have set design. I see a lot of people are choosing set design, photography, architectural photography. Good. So this is just an exercise to see where people think, and I think that many of you have that sort of diverse thinking, that you want to do something that is not very conventional, which is very good. All right. Moving on, try something new and different. If you don't currently enjoy what you do. So as I said, try and learn and take in as much as knowledge as you can. Build yourself a portfolio. Don't be afraid to network, get to know people and make contacts, because that's the only way you will be able to excel. Once you build contacts, once you have a network, once you have a portfolio, is a way to attract attention. Now I'm going to quickly run through my portfolio. So I'm just quickly going to brush through. I'm not going to go into detail. This is something that I started at the very beginning. It was a farmhouse. It was more of an architectural work that I did. And then soon later after that, I found myself into interior design, where I was doing offices, trying to bring in the architectural knowledge of sketching and shapes and geometry. I did another office as well. Again, here, if you see on the right side, these are 3D images. And on the left side, these are actual images. So the whole idea was to get your final image, the final actual built on site, as close as possible to your 3D image, which was quite sort of successful. Moving on, I then slightly shifted to food and beverage, which is restaurants, trying to bring in concept and trying to play around here. Again, moving from that area to residential, it's quite different how a commercial space works from a residential space. So it's very important to sort of acquire different knowledge in different areas. I did a lot of drawings and technical drawings, which is contracting, because I wanted to understand how things work behind the design, how you build them in actual, what are the things that's required, like the nuts, the screws, the bolts, the wood piece behind, etc. Commercial restaurants, this is quite interesting because you really need to know what happens in the kitchen behind, what equipments you use, how you treat the space behind the counter, in front of the counter, what are the requirements of the people who work behind the counter, and also your clients who are your customers in front. So a quite different project from the rest of it. Moving on to hotels. Again, hotel is quite vast, so you need to really understand your customer, the footfall. And if you look at this one, this is now into furniture design. So moving from there into furniture design, I would work with the carpenters. There are carpenters who did handwork, who would carve Of course, I didn't know how to carve, but I would try and get my hands on carving a little bit to understand how they do it, and just for the fun of it, trying to understand how you put the pieces together. So if you look at the process from left to right, is how they would pick each piece and they would make a dowel, or they would make an insertion of one piece into another, and carving, etc., etc. And the last one that I would show you here is, this is a very interesting one, because if you need to create a pattern, a mashrabia pattern, a chair which is like this, you really need to understand how this works, how you put it in the cast, how you use the wood. The wood is used in plies, in 2 mm multiple plies, so that it's more bendy, it's more flexible. You keep it in the cast for 72 hours, so it takes the shape once it comes out. So this is sort of my my journey of moving from architecture to interior design, to contracting, to furniture, to carpentry, etc. Moving on. Third point is what you are best at and how you could apply your architecture to that place, and vice versa. Practice on your craft. So this is a very famous quote by an actor called Will Smith, who everyone knows. So talent comes naturally, but skill is only developed by hours and hours and hours of beating at your craft. So some people have a natural talent of painting, but some people, they don't, but they really like painting. The only way to develop and become better is by practicing, is by beating it on your craft, practicing your craft, practicing it every day. So that's one thing that you need to, everyone needs to realize. I'm going to quickly run into my book folio just to quickly show you what practicing and how you can practice and get yourself, like I said, you have workshops, you have carpentry workshops in the new university. Please make use of this. While I was in university, I never really paid attention to these small things, which I feel I wish I could go back and, you know, take those classes again and explore my talent there. So this is a very conceptual project that I did during postgraduate. That's me in the workshop, just trying out different things. I think it's running too slow. Again, it's all about picking up abstract studies, trying to understand what the concept is behind things. This is not my work. This is just an example from Alan Weller, an artist who designed a chair which was very abstract, but there was a lot of philosophy to it. So this is basically breaking down the chairs into different pieces and just trying to experiment with it. This is me playing with different forms. Study of cube, trying to understand spaces and voids. This is again is an experiment trying to understand space in general. Workshop technique study, how joints work. So this is one of my pieces for post-graduation. Is basically a concept where you have a wood panel, and if you see the hole, this is me breaking through the hole, and the chair that you see in front is created through the pieces of wood that was broken down from this entire panel. So it's all about how you form something from a different piece. Is basically improvising or adapting from one piece to another piece. Puzzles. So once you break down this, which is a weird shape, you then somehow, by terms of permutation, combination, and reverse designing, you form a table like that. So this table then breaks back and goes back into this piece here. So it's basically called assemble and dismantle in the reverse order. And so I did an experiment with a loft, which is where I lived in London. It was a limited space. So if you see the two red walls, my experiment was trying to break down these walls and trying to create furniture out of these walls. So the whole experiment went by color coding them. As you see, you break them down into pieces. Then you start applying your logic to it of what you can do with those pieces. And here, then you start forming different shapes. So you could use it as a chair, a bar stool, a bed, a lounge, cabinet. Once you have these things, then you need to understand the connections, the hardware. So you use as a bed, you use it as a side table, you bring it down, you use the blue as a table. So this is a scenario where it's a sit-out lounge, a scenario where you're entertaining guests. And then the prototype. So you go into making it into reality. So this is where I say, use your workshop, try and experiment with things. So this is me trying to make something out of it, trying to use connections, experimenting on connections, making metal connections, connectors to connect them, using color, of course. And then you have the final product where you experiment and you sort of showcase in an abstract way. Of course, this is a concept, so you showcase it in an abstract way what you can do. So that is just a short insight on that. Moving forward, okay, never be afraid to be different. This is quite interesting. I'm sure most of you know who this is, or maybe not. She was a celebrity, is a celebrity, a Hollywood celebrity, Lady Gaga. Quite a controversial topic. She was very different from the rest of them. But the bottom line is she was successful in what she was doing because she was not afraid to be different. Of course, we all know this. Dancing House by Frank Gehry. Again, a very controversial topic back then in Prague because the general typology of building was so different. And when Dancing House was built, it became a big hue and cry. But eventually it became a masterpiece, and deconstruction then took on as its own typology. So it's not that being different is being weird. You could possibly create something by also being different. A famous painting by Salvador Dali. So Salvador Dali, as we know, had very weird and abstract painting. People didn't like his painting. People didn't like him as a personality. He had a weird mustache, and this is back in the old days. But he was a person who was very different, and he was not afraid to be different. And well, he was in some way very successful. And last but not the least, my personal favorite. We all know this is quite a laugh. Mr. Bean, Rowan Atkinson. And I really like his story because he was a person who was on to getting a PhD in electrical engineering. He was passionate about acting. People told him he was weird. He had a speech problem. He could not act. But in fact, he is the only actor who has gone into becoming a world famous actor who made people laugh even without saying a word. So he was different. He was successful. There is no right or wrong. It's just points of view. And I think this is something where most of us get disheartened or get disappointed, because when people tell you, no, this is wrong, this is not correct. But always take that positively, because it's just their point of view. There is always a way to find and try and prove that your point is right. You just have to put the right concept to it, and you have to work towards it and make a little more sense. That's it. So don't be afraid, and don't be disappointed if someone tells you you're wrong. There is no right or wrong. Keep an open mind and enjoy the process. Very important. Open mind, as much as knowledge as you can take it. Even if people criticize you, take it positively. Take it as positive criticism, and enjoy the process that you do. Once you enjoy it, that's when you will like to keep on going. Now play another game quickly. We are towards the end. I want you to log on to your phone again. If you're logged in already, which is fine, menti.com, and the code is 490341. And this time is going to be a multiple choice. So you have to choose from one of the four, and keep an open mind. As I said, there's no judgmental here, judging you here. Your answers are not going to be called out against your name. So choose something that you would want to choose in general, out of photography, out of artist, a typical architect, a travel guide, architect, a chef. $78 people still going. Okay, so I see a lot of people are very artistic. I see 24 points for artist architect. Then we have 20 for a travel sort of architect. Then we have photography architect. Then we have chef and typical architect as well. So as you see here, this exercise is not about. It's not about, okay, I want to become a photographer and not an architect. This is more about discovering your talent, your potential, and trying to cross over. So you're an architect, yes, you pursue your career as an architect, but try and keep an open mind of trying different things. So photography, I try photography and I come back, I implement my photography skills and learning into architecture. I travel, I go around the world, like as I do right now. I travel for work, I travel for other things. I bring the knowledge that I have and travel back into my architecture practice. And there's always a crossover, and you never know, you can always have a dual career. You could become a photographer and architect. So I know lots of my friends who are practicing as architects, but their side business is photography. And it runs so well that both the professions complement each other. And they're quite successful with that. Artist, architect, yes, that is a very, very, very successful sort of direction where you practice your art and you're doing architecture. So there is always a crossover, and there's always something to learn from. So, you're not always learning. You're not always stuck into an architect's office, sitting there drafting toilets or drafting kitchens that lots of people find themselves at the initial point in their career. Right, coming back to the last point, positive mindset. You have a positive mind, you have a positive vibe, you'll have a positive life. So always keep your mindset positive. Try to convert the negative into the positive. If someone tries to tell you anything negative, try and take it in a good and happy note, and try and convert the other person also in a positive way, which is the only key to success. Finally, this is me on the right. This is a talent that I discovered myself last year when I got into a fitness routine of running obstacle courses. I haven't ran around the world yet, but I've ran around certain countries representing India. And it's enjoyable. I try to bring in as much as I can the knowledge and try to cross over in different fields. So this is me. Thank you very much. I'm on LinkedIn, on Instagram. You can follow me. You can ask me questions, more than happy. And I hope you have a very successful career ahead.
Thank you, sir. That was a very informative and interesting session, and I'm sure we all gained a lot of knowledge. As for the Q&A session, since we have session time limits, the questions that we have received will be sent to the speaker, and the answer of the same will be available on our official media. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time to address the questions. It was a very interesting and interactive session. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We would also like to thank our heads, Convener Architect Lokesh sir and Co-Convener Professor Ashok sir for their constant support in carrying out this event. We would also like to thank all the faculty members of SRMC for their constant guidance for carrying out the webinar series. We would also like to thank the technical team for the support. Also, the link for the feedback form is posted in the chat box. Kindly please fill the same and send us back to receive your e-certificates. On behalf of SRMC, I thank you all for joining us today, and I also invite you all to join tomorrow's Young Creative Mind series, Talk 5, Design Balance of Contemporary Times and Digital Evolution, presented by architect Aquin Noel, that will commence at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Chris, for joining us and telling us there are so many avenues that architecture opens up for us, and we are also fortunate to be in this stream of architecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you for the chance and for the opportunity to join you all.
Thank you, sir.